Hi everyone, it's Alyssa of The Life of an Aspie, and I'm here streaming for the Autistic Gaming Initiative after like 2 months of not streaming, so I've been out in another universe for a while, but I'm back. So today we're going to be talking about autism and trauma, but first, okay, I'm a little bothered by the fact that it's dark in here, but I don't like lights, so if you can't see me, that's too bad, because my eyeballs prefer the dark. So, yeah, before I start though, I think I got jam on my blanket. No! Okay, so I'm very distracted, clearly. So, before I start though, so because this is for the Autistic Gaming Initiative, our goal is to raise money for the Autism Women's Network and the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, so if you want to donate to either of them, they're really awesome. There's links in the description if you're watching on YouTube, which I should only be streaming on YouTube right now. So, so I'm actually really tired right now, but I'm streaming anyway, so why not? Oh, hi Megan, to answer your question, I'm tired. Hello everybody, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Joao, and, Megan, and someone else was here earlier, not sure if they're still here. But yeah, it's been a while since I've streamed because, well, long story short, I know you guys probably, some of you have been keeping up with like my personal life, and I was dating someone named Matt Rhodes who was in my film Through Our Eyes, Living with Asperger's, and long story short, things didn't really go well. So I think I needed those 2 months off just to kind of get my life back on track. I've been working a job, and oh yay, I pronounced your name right. So I've been working for Uber Eats recently, which is actually pretty fun. It's nice because there's no boss and no one to criticize my work, and I mean except for the customers. But you know, it's easier to have to please customers rather than, you know, a big terrifying boss man or whatever. And I also get to decide, you know, when and where I do all of my deliveries. If you don't know Uber Eats, you do it's kind of like Uber, except instead of driving people, you're driving food. Like you're delivering food from restaurants to people. So it's kind of fun. I also get to find a lot of new like restaurants and things like that, which is nice. So, excuse me as I blow my nose. I'm Squidward. Yay! Congratulations, David. That is awesome. I hope things are going well for you. And I think her name was it Vel? I realized that I have a chapstick addiction. Chapstick addiction. And I don't have a chapstick on my desk. So we're gonna fix that because I'm an addict. I'll be right back. Okay, I got it. We're good. I'm not gonna be having any withdrawal symptoms anytime soon, which is usually consisting of dry lips and anxiety over not having chapstick in my pocket. So, yes, I have a problem, but it's a very common one. To answer your question, Megan, I'm not into football or any other sports unless that counts video games or swimming, probably. I don't even really watch people swimming as a sport. I just like swimming. Woohoo! That's awesome. California's a nice place to live weather-wise. Unless it's like in the middle of summer, then I think it's really, 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 really hot. So I have no script or anything right now. I'm trying to think of like I had things to talk about here. I did, I swear. It's like, here's my classic avoidance associated with trauma and PTSD. I don't want to talk about it. No, so the reason why I chose this topic to talk about, dang it, my nose is distracting me. I wanted to talk about it because my nose told me to. So I haven't been live for a long time, so I'm like not really used to it. So The reason why I'm interested in this topic is because for for a very long time, I've strongly believed, and actually, no, not very long time, maybe the last couple years, probably, I've believed that there is definitely an association with autism and trauma. Not saying that trauma causes autism, I'm not one of those people, but I do believe that due to our sensitive nature, we are more prone to, I guess, developing not just PTSD, but like overall, like kind of like little traumas throughout our life. And I mean, I say little, but to a lot of us, they aren't so little. Like, I mean, I think we're more prone to trauma that most people experience. Like, people who are actually diagnosed with PTSD, usually they're people who have experienced something really extreme, like, for instance, like a traffic accident, or or rape, or what else? Oh, definitely like war. So, you know, you hear about a lot of veterans who have PTSD. But for people on the spectrum, I believe that it is a lot more complicated than that. It's not just extreme things, like, because we experience things that seem kind of small very extremely. I actually have an example of that, but I'm going to read all of your comments here first. And yes, hello, autistic Daggy. Hello, I like England, so you're awesome. I don't know what Article 13 is. Yay, congratulations, Megan. MDMA? Not sure if that... Are you talking about, a drug? I don't know. I don't think you, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I'm not someone who's really into drugs. I've heard people who, like, take drugs, like, you know, illicit drugs for, treating their own PTSD. Personally, I would not recommend that unless maybe you're the adventurous type and not afraid of, I don't know, any bad things that could happen if you take drugs. I tend to opt for more, I guess I opt for things like, you know, natural supplements and lifestyle things, and like just having a quiet lifestyle for me is very helpful. So anyway, for like an autistic person, I think I'm actually like kind of bothered by the silence right now, and I have some, I don't know if you hear, I have some nature sounds playing, but I can't hear them because I don't have my headphones on, and I didn't want like two sound sources. So I'm gonna go grab my earbuds because I'm like, for some reason I can't focus as well when there's silence. It's just creepy, like someone's watching me, man. I had a pair of earbuds under my pile of crud over there. I don't know what my accent is even anymore. Over there. I'm not Southern, really not. I'm Illinoisan. The Bears. Alrighty, let me turn this on. Oh yay, I can hear the nature sounds. Lovely. Alright. So... oh, what was I saying? Oh, something about autistic people and trauma, of course. So, I think that, like, even events that seem a little bit smaller than, and I say smaller as in, like, what might seem minor to a typical person, could actually be really huge for somebody on the spectrum. I have a friend who, basically she had an encounter with like, I think it was like her friend's dog who was like really excited to see her, and it was like kind of a big dog, and so the dog basically like ran towards her and like pinned her to the floor, and that's just because the dog was like excited to see her, and it was like in a friendly way, but she was terrified because it was like this big dog, and it's like she's startled easily, and so from that, ever since then, she just she would be extremely anxious around dogs. Like, you could visibly see how anxious she is, or was around dogs, and so she could hardly be around them. She would like avoid them. Over time, though, and I'm kind of proud of her for this, she did eventually kind of do a little bit of, I guess, exposure therapy on herself, and she just gradually, you know, got used to being around dogs, usually more gentle dogs, until she was able to actually, you know, sit down and relax and even pet the dogs. And so now when I'm hanging out with her and we're like at a friend's house and they have a dog, she'll go and she'll pet the dog, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing, because I knew how much they, you know, terrified her before. But yeah, that's an example of how I think an autistic person can easily like store a traumatic event, and it can be something that is not necessarily, you know, considered terrifying to the average person, but might be to people like us. So okay. So I want to answer all of your questions. So yeah, Gary, yeah, I'm like that too. Having to pace yourself when doing things because you burn out very quickly. Even just a few minutes ago, right before this live stream, I went to go do laundry, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do so much today, and I went and put all the laundry in there, and I came upstairs, and I'm just like, why am I so tired? And I just like lay on my bed, and I'm like I can't move, I can't do anything, but I got a live stream in 5-10 minutes, and that's probably why I'm out of it. So yes, I like cats too, even though I like dogs more. I think I might... Oh, wait. I have food here. No wonder I'm so fuzzy. I made myself a protein shake. It's chocolate peanut butter. Sometimes I find it difficult to eat food because of the textures and stuff, especially if I'm anxious or if I'm in a rush. I just prefer to just make myself a protein shake so I don't have to think about it. Like, I think about... Earlier, my mom offered some chicken. I was thinking about chicken and the texture of chicken and how it's like some chicken's kind of dry, and it's like, you know, it has all these little strandy things, and like I'm thinking about chewing it, and it's just like, my brain is overloading just thinking about it. I like chicken, it's just that I'm in a rush. So I will admit this is kind of hard to talk about, and I'm having a hard time focusing, so this is like, I'm not sure where to begin with this. Like, this is actually a topic I'm really passionate about, and I'm just like, I'm too laid back right now to to really like get into the, you know, the really deep stuff about it. But so, but what I was saying before about autism and like, I'm probably actually gonna honestly hide the chat for now because I'm having a really hard time focusing. I will like bring it back up and read questions every once in a while. I'm just trying to think of what to say, and I'm like reading what you're saying at the same time. But I do appreciate you guys and your all of the things that you have to contribute to the conversation. Just kind of out of it today. I think that due to the fact that Oh, before I get into this, I just remembered, because going off, you know, the whole, like, the seemingly minor things possibly causing trauma, there are some really good articles that I found online, and I actually have, I think I put them in the description. Yeah, if you go under the description on YouTube and click show more, and scroll down, there's something that says great posts on autism and trauma. And there is... Oh, which one of these had this in it? They actually gave in one of these articles, they gave a couple examples of the kind of things that can be completely overwhelming or even traumatic to somebody on the spectrum. Yeah, here we go. I'm gonna read from the article that says... Oh, which one is this? Does autism raise the risk of PTSD? Um, so a little bit down the page, there's a paragraph that says, okay, it says, abuse, sexual assault, violence, natural disasters, and wartime combat are all common causes of PTSD in the general population. Among autistic people, though, less extreme experiences, fire alarms, paperwork, the loss of a family pet, even a stranger's offhand comment, can also be destabilizing. They can also be traumatized by others' behavior toward them. And like I want to emphasize like the the others' behavior towards them thing, because I mean, imagine being a neurotypical person and you can interact just fine with people, but let's say you, for some reason, someone doesn't like you, or that you experience rejection. I know that neurotypical people do experience rejection and awkward moments and things like that. And sorry, I was like reading your last comment, Star Child, and yes, I have felt hungry and nauseous at the same time, and it's like makes it kind of hard to eat. But yeah, imagine like this neurotypical person. Let's say it's a guy and he's trying to flirt with this girl because he wants a girlfriend or something, and she like rejects him. And imagine like that, very unpleasant feeling, associated with rejection, and make it times 10. And that actually kind of reminds me that that guy, the psychologist, one of the psychologists in my documentary, Dr. Wahlberg, said that autistic people tend to, it's like they experience everything times 10. And I would agree with that. So imagine that, the feeling of rejection times 10. Now, add on not being neurotypical, therefore you are a more awkward person socially, and so that means you're probably going to have more encounters like that. So not only does the rejection feel 10 times worse than it does for the average person, but you're going to experience that like maybe 5 times more or something like that. I don't know if there are actual numbers for that. Everybody is different. But so you're pretty much you're experiencing these extremely overwhelming things like all the time. Like, I know that I'm very affected by people's comments, especially if those people are close to me. And like I remember a close friend of mine, she told me something about me. It wasn't true, but it was like it was very hurtful. It came across as kind of judgmental. I know she was like trying to be helpful. She's also on the spectrum too, so she'll like bluntly tell you if she thinks there's something wrong, or like she'll say what she thinks, which I definitely appreciate. And I tell her, always be honest, even if it's gonna hurt me, even if I'll like remember it for the rest of my life and relive it 1,000 times. But yeah, it's like that echoed within me for quite a while before I finally, I don't even know if I am over it by now, but it's like most people would be like, oh gosh, Alyssa, just let it go. And like, people haven't told me that, but I mean, I've heard of a lot of autistic people, and I've seen this where an autistic person like is ruminating over something, like they ruminate over something someone said or someone did, or I have a friend who I suspect is on the spectrum. I'm not naming any names just because like I want to be respectful of people, but I have a friend who I knew for a while, and I suspected that she was on the spectrum, but she didn't have a diagnosis or anything. And she had a lot of really tough experiences with school. And though I actually have 2 friends who were actually in the same situation here. 2 friends who had bad experiences with school, both on the spectrum. Well, one definitely on the spectrum, one maybe on the spectrum. And they would tell me like stories about their experiences with school, and like they would always go back to the same ones about unpleasant experiences that they had with interactions with teachers and students and things like that. And I remember when I was younger, and I should have known better, because I'm like this too. I do ruminate over things. Like I remember thinking about one of those friends who had those experiences. I thought like, why can't you let this go? Like, why are you so focused on this? Like, it's clearly distressing you. And I realized looking back, it's like, that's probably just, that's honestly a classic example of trauma. Just how much they talk about it and think about it, and how much it distresses them, and like they can't seem to move on from it. Now what's kind of unfortunate is that because these experiences might not seem as extreme to the average person, it can be a lot harder for someone on the spectrum to get a diagnosis of PTSD if they need the diagnosis. And this has been my personal experience. I'll get into that, but I'll read some of your comments first. So, okay. Oh, I remember you, Autistic Pride. Good to see you again. Glad that you are proud of who you are. And yeah, I do remember you. I like your little smiley faces. And awesome. Yay. Please excuse me while I take a bite of this delicious applesauce, because solid food says no today. So, so going back to the PTSD diagnosis thing. So for the longest time, I've always had issues. Especially, I mean, I've had them in childhood. Maybe I just didn't know that I had some of these issues, but like, I had them in childhood, but I remember like when I hit puberty, maybe part of this was hormones, I don't know, but I remember like, you know, as soon as I became a teenager, from that point, suddenly I just like, I had a lot of issues with depression, anxiety, suicide ideation, all of these problems, and I didn't know where they're coming from. And like, I know a lot of teenagers can get that anyway, and a lot of it can be, you know, the hormones going crazy, and your brain chemistry is messed up, and you're facing, you know, pressure at school, and pressure from peers, and pressure from everywhere. And so, sorry, I'm trying to get my train of thought back. But I mean, I was actually, what's kind of funny is I was homeschooled, and so for most of my life. So I would say I actually had a pretty calm like childhood, and like I did like socialize, and I was part of the 4-H club, which I really loved, and it was a lot of fun. And I did of course experience sensory overload with a lot of things. Just because I stayed at home doesn't mean I didn't experience that. And so I kind of like, I came from a really good, I think, schooling experience, and then I think there were a couple changes in my life that happened when I became a teenager. The biggest one is, I think I was about 14 or 15. This was like after, I think it was just after I had graduated from middle school, and I had been to middle school, like I've been to public school for 7th and 8th grade in middle school. So I did have a little bit of public schooling experience. I just happened to be at a really good like school, and it was the teachers were great, and they were very accepting and understanding of me, and like, you know, I had a couple misunderstandings with people, but nothing really traumatic or like intense enough for me to say that, you know, that was a bad experience, because I don't think it was for me. What the heck is going on with my throat today? I done gone and swallowed a crocodile. I'm gonna drink my protein shake. Even though if I was a true Southern American, I would be eating pickled cucumbers and, I don't know, pickled everything, and lots of salt on everything, and cabbage and beans, and I don't know. No, I do like Southern food. It's actually really good. They put bacon fat in like everything, and it's good, but sometimes it's too rich. I come back to Illinois, and I'm thankful to have my very plain, gluten-free, lightweight, flavorless food. So after I graduated from middle school, which I didn't actually attend my graduation because I had like really bad sun poisoning on my shoulders. Like my shoulders were bubbling as if they had been on fire, and I couldn't wear my gown because of that, so I couldn't go to graduation. But I didn't care. So but yeah, after I graduated, me and my family, we used to live in a different town, and we moved to another town where I am right now. And that was probably the biggest change of my life, moving from my childhood home to here, because I had a lot of memories of that place, and I didn't really know many people around here. We had just recently given away my old dog. His name was Dusty. He was a cockapoo. He was very cute, but he bit people, and like we didn't want any lawsuits on our hands. Like he had some issues, and we just couldn't keep him, and I was like really, really upset about that because I really loved Dusty. And so like I would say that was traumatic for me, having to give up my dog. And moving was traumatic for me. And on top of that, when I came here, I started going to public school again, and I was going to the high school in our town, and then after a while, like, I just didn't have a great experience with that. I don't remember half of it, but I wasn't there very long. It was like a month, and then we decided, like, this isn't a good experience for me. Like, my parents, like I told my parents what was going on, and, like, they decided, let's, like, I mean, they didn't decide. I had a say in it. Like, they let me, basically, they asked me, Alyssa, do you want to keep going to this school, or do you want to be homeschooled again? And I chose homeschooling because, like, I wasn't getting the help that I needed. I wasn't learning anything. People were being buttheads. Like, it was just not a great experience. And so then I was homeschooled for a while, but the perk of that is that I could take some college courses while I was, in high school, because I was... Oh, that's my robot.
The time is now 3:30 p.m.
Thank you, robot, for that reminder. I don't know if you guys heard that. His name is Robbie, and he's a little character on my screen that pops out and tells me what time it is. So, we're gonna read your... Okay. And yeah, some autistic people can have bipolar. That's actually pretty common, like, to have comorbid conditions. Robot. If you want a robot on your screen, I'm gonna actually type this. I think this is the website. Let me check. I'm gonna double check. It might not. Deskbot. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Deskbot is like, it's kind of an old software. It's kind of it's from like, I think it's like Windows 98 or something, but it works up to Windows 7, and I have Windows 10, but it still works. It's just the character on the screen has like a weird background, but there is a robot in there. It's all free. You just have to make sure you got the characters downloaded. So anyway, so what was I saying? Oh, so I'm actually going somewhere with this. I'm not just telling you my whole life story. But yeah, because I was being homeschooled, I had some time to take some community college courses, because I decided, I want to go to college when I get older, so I can, get some of my gen eds out of the way. And I found it very lonely going to a community college and not knowing anyone and being younger than everyone, because I was only like, 16, and there were like 18 to like 20 somethings. And I was when I did reach the age of 18, I was like a late bloomer. So like I realized that around 18, it's like, I think I might like boys. So around that time I was like, not only lonely, but I wanted a boyfriend, and like I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know how to socialize and make friends and have that turn into a relationship and all of that. I didn't know any of that. So that was like really hard on me. And I have made some friends when I was going going to community college, and like there's like one instance that really stood out to me. And I mean, actually, there's a lot of social things when I was a teenager that stood out to me as extremely distressing, and I clung to these because I literally couldn't move on from them. And now looking back and thinking, yeah, that was actually traumatic for me. There was this guy that I liked at my college, and I wanted to be his friend, but I did like him too. I thought he was cute, but I came on way too strong, and I didn't know that I did. And he didn't like communicate that to me, if that makes sense, because and he was non-autistic, so like I know a lot of non-autistic people who usually are I mean, so there are some people who are more upfront, but like they might be nice, and this is what he did, is he was like too nice to tell me that I was coming on too strong, and tell me to slow the heck down, Alyssa. Or like, if he didn't like me in the first place, I wish he would have just told me. Because at some point, he just blocked me on Facebook, and, well, actually, he sent me a message first, and he's like, I'm sorry, this is gonna work out, like I feel, like, stifled around you, or something, something along those lines, and, like, he didn't really even specify why he didn't want to be around me, and then he blocked me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was harsh, like, I wasn't expecting that, and I've had more than one encounter like that. That was probably the only one in person, though. A lot of them were like, because I had a lot of online friends, and those were honestly as real to me as my real friendships with people and real social relationships with people. And I've met people online and befriended them, and actually dated a few, and then had situations where the guy would, well, one situation where, a couple situations, I'm just thinking which ones are which here, but I remember there was one person online that I liked, and he, at some point, he just said, you know what, I don't like who you are, and broke up with me. I'm like, what? It's like, what happened? What went wrong? What went wrong? Nobody told me. Like, he didn't specify anything, and they didn't all end like that. Like, one guy was cheating on me, another person, they don't usually talk about this with just anybody. I'm just trying to think of, like, the most potent, like social issues that I've had. I just know that, like, since those encounters, I was always, like, terribly afraid to get close to people, because, I was afraid that they were going to reject me, or all of a sudden be angry at me, or like for reasons I can't figure out, or like say that they don't like me, and that would naturally that would make me act really weird if I actually was trying to get close to people, because I'm like anticipating them doing something, and they're not, and so like that. I guess those are some examples of like social situations that I believe for me were actually like traumatic, because I couldn't let go of them for like years and years, and they greatly affected me. So every time I would get, again, if I were to try to get close to someone, it's almost like I was reliving that. I was reliving all those rejections, and I was reliving all those negative interactions, and even sometimes believing that the other person that I'm getting close to, even if it's not true, that they actually don't like me, or that they're getting ready to leave me or say goodbye, and like even if there's like no chance of that, even if that person like really does genuinely like me, it's like my brain would shape this negative reality. And honestly, from my research, this is actually really common with PTSD and common with people who have experienced trauma. It's like you have these specific triggers when you're in a similar situation, or exposed to something that reminds you of the event. You have these like intense experiences, and like and I know there are people with PTSD who have like I think, I don't know if this is one of the official criteria, but I know flashbacks is a common thing. And I think I have had flashbacks before, but for me it's mostly like, I don't know how to put it. It's like an altered reality, but I would almost categorize it as a flashback, because I'm like, I'm reliving the rejection, and and I'm not seeing things clearly. I think that the other person is a threat, and they're not. So, I'm gonna, before I continue, I'm gonna read your comments because I went on for quite some time. So, trains are awesome. You said there's a girl you used to text, but after a while she just stopped texting back, and now you worry that you did something wrong. Yeah, I hate it when that happens. Like you never know, especially with texting and like messaging and stuff. Like, you really never know. Like, is that person busy, or do they just not want to talk to you? Did you do something? That's very anxiety-inducing. And some people who are, honestly, there's this kind of this weird thing that some people do. I guess it's socially acceptable to do this, but like, it's like, if you don't like someone, just like stop talking to them, no explanation, just don't text them. But then that's like, is that right? What if the person's autistic? Why don't you just tell them straight up you don't want to talk? I think that makes more sense to me. So, awesome. So, awesome, you guys are having a conversation. It's great. So, I might actually let more light in because it's getting kind of dark, and I know it's kind of hard to see me, so I'm gonna go turn another light on. I'll be back. I'm also gonna use the bathroom. I'll be right back. Hello. I have returned. So if you hear a weird noise coming from over there, I have an electric teapot, and it gets rather loud, but that's because it heats up water very, very quickly, so it just gets super, super hot. Yay, I can see me better. That's awesome. Oh, and I want to show you my t-shirt. Teen Titans. It's the, 2002 Teen Titans. I think it was 2002 or was it 2001? I don't know. Not the Teen Titans Go. Some people like Teen Titans Go. I don't personally, because I grew up with the original and I'm rather attached to it. So, that's going to be a little distracting, that thing over there. I don't know if you could hear it. It's going to get louder. So I did want to talk about my difficulty in getting a diagnosis for PTSD, but before I do, like, I feel like very thoroughly explaining, like, what trauma is like for, or what can be traumatic for someone on the autism spectrum, because I feel like people don't quite understand, like, be like, oh, you just, you just, trying to think of some situations, like, it's like, oh, you're still, it's like, oh, you're still going on about how that person, you know, said something bad to you or something, like, just get over it. Or it's like, oh, moving from, one city to another, that's a totally normal experience. A lot of people go through that. I totally understand. Like, no, no, you don't. Or it's like, I don't know, there's a lot of things, like, and they stack up. They stack up. I feel like as I get older, it's like things are getting more intense, and I have to consciously, actively fight against, um, extremely stressful situations building up, because as an adult, I've actually developed more, mini traumas, and it's like, and it's from things that other people would think are just normal adult things. Like, for one, like, dealing with the government. That's a big one, like, because I'm low income, and I have to, and I'm on SSI, so I have to, because of my disability, I can't work full time, because, I have, mental and physical barriers that prevent me from doing so. I'd like to work full time, I can't. And so, like, I have to, like, report my income if I work, so I've been, like, afraid to work, because I, like, don't want to, like, lose my SSI. But, I mean, the actual, like, overwhelming situations that I face are more to do with, like, actually dealing with, the government, and, like, having to apply for things, and, like, the government not telling me, when they, like, recently, because I've been on, Medicaid and Medicare. Recently, they dropped my Medicaid insurance. I don't know why. I think it's because I, like, started working and I forgot to report it to them specifically. I don't remember what happened. I just know that they didn't give me any warning, and they just said, oh, we're dropping you off of, like, this Medicaid because you no longer are eligible, and I'm, like, freaking out over this. So I've had more than one experience with this happening, where, like, I've had issues with insurance, and, like, having to make 1,000 phone calls for, like, one of the there's, like, a bunch of different types of, like, Medicaid. Like, you can pick different companies that have different, like, Medicaid insurance, like, Aetna or Blue Cross or something. And I remember one of them that I chose, I thought, oh, this will be easy. I just, like, call, I just pick a doctor, and I make a call and be like, hey, I want to make an appointment and stuff. And then I realized it's not that easy, because every single one that I called, they said, oh, we don't take this insurance anymore. Literally every single primary care doctor that I called said, we don't take this insurance anymore. And so I had to call my insurance and all this stuff. And this sounds just like normal adult stuff that, like, this stuff comes up all the time, and people are incompetent, and you have to make some phone calls, and you have to get it fixed. For me, phone calls are terrifying. I'm developing, like I'm compiling more and more negative experiences associated with the phone and the phone calls, because of having to, like, talk to people and be assertive, which I'm okay at. I just don't prefer not to be super assertive to get what I want. I just need to, it's like, dudes, I just need a doctor. Like, just, like, are you gonna help me? Like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't help you with this. Having to face that thousands of times and not knowing who to call or where to go to get it fixed. Eventually, I just switched to a different insurance, and that fixed the problem. But that was a total nightmare. And then they dropped me off. I finally found an insurance I was happy with. I'm like, okay, things are going good. Recently, I learned I need to get a root canal, because like, I went to the dentist. Took me forever to find a good dentist. Now I have a trauma associated with dentists, because I would look up which dentists are covered by my insurance, and, like, everyone that I went to, I got a bad vibe, like, and I noticed things, and it was like, oh, like, the equipment looks kind of outdated, and the dentist is not wearing one of those little magnifying things. It's like, you can't really do your job without that. One of the dentists I went to had a hand tremor, and I'm like, I don't want you drilling into my teeth with a hand tremor. And, like, lot of the dentists that were available were all ones that I just didn't trust, and so I remember the last one that I went to, like, I literally had a mental breakdown. I was crying in the dentist office because I couldn't stand the idea of it being another what I perceived as a shady dentist. And what's terrifying for me is I'm not actually very good at telling, like, whether someone's trustworthy or not. And that terrifies me even more. So it's like, I don't know if they're trustworthy. I don't know if they're trained. I don't know if they can do their job. I used to trust doctors and dentists. I used to think, like, they know everything and, like, I can trust them. And now I'm like, oh, I have to go to the doctor. What if they prescribe something that's gonna kill me? Or what if this dentist drills all of my teeth or something? Or, like, and I've read about, like, dentists who are fake ones who, like, will try to say, oh, you have 10 cavities, we need to take care of those right away, and then you know that that's like a bad, well, more that's usually a scam dentist if they do that, if they say ridiculous things like that. So then on top of that, you know, I was told I need to get a root canal, so that's more anxiety. I've had several root canals. They're horrible. I've tolerated them because I need them. And then, all of a sudden, I get a letter and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're not eligible for Medicaid anymore." And I wanted to get this root canal done right away because I had to wait like a month just to get a referral because the doctors that I had were very slow, and, like, I get it, they have a lot of patients, and I was like, okay, please give me this referral. And so, I just broke down for quite a while after I got that letter, and that required me to make more phone calls, to go into the offices, to talk to people. I remember, like, I had to ask my dad to help me out and come with me to the office because, like, to talk to somebody, because they don't answer their phones, and, because, like, I was extremely anxious about going there, and, my dad's a good negotiator, so he's always good to take along with things like that. And I remember I was trying to explain the situation. Like, my dad still expects me to be, like, an adult and, like, you know, I do the talking. But, like, I remember I was trying to explain the situation, and the people who are working there didn't seem to understand what I was talking about. It's like they clearly spoke English, but they didn't get what I was talking about. And at that point, I was like, it's like, all right, I'm already freaking triggered times 10,000. And I don't mean, like, the crappy kind of triggered that people say is, you know, where people are just making it up or, like, overblowing it. Like, no, I have legit, like, trauma associated with these offices and with having to make phone calls. That I was trying to explain the situation again and again, and I was, like, on the verge of crying. And, like, they were saying, oh, you don't have to get upset. I'm just thinking, like, you guys. Okay. See, now I'm just getting agitated talking about it even. So, I'm gonna go check my tea in a minute. Just, let me read. Oh, wow, you guys. Oh, the original Teen Titans is coming back. What? Well, I hope that's not just a rumor. Awesome. My favorite Teen Titan was Beast Boy. When I was a kid, I legit had a crush on him, and, like, I would draw Beast Boy all the time. Like, it was always the same picture, the exact same picture. It was just like his head and shoulders, and I would just draw that all the time, all over my notebooks. So, yeah, I would not use Tinder, personally. I don't want to traumatize myself more when it comes to relationships and stuff. And I don't know how to pronounce your name. Konye? Wilkinson? What specialist diagnosed ASD? I think anyone who has the credentials to diagnose anything in the DSM, can diagnose ASD, but whether or not they will diagnose you with ASD really depends on that person and their training and how much experience that they've had. So I would find someone who knows a lot about people on the spectrum, and that's all I can really tell you. I don't know a whole lot of specific therapists. Oh yeah, I agree with you on that, Star Child. That we relate to characters who are misfits, definitely. I don't know if you watch Steven Universe, but I relate a lot to Pearl from Steven Universe. And like the gems in general are technically misfits on Earth, so that works. Surprise shots are not fun, Star Child. Yeah. And shots, like getting a shot can be like really, really frightening for some people. I know some people who are like afraid of needles because they had like a bad experience with a shot. You wish America was a bicycle country. Oh, I wish too, but there's not always sidewalks and things to ride on, and they're not always bicycle friendly, and you can get hit by a truck and things like that. You'd also have to ride really, really far to get anywhere, depending on where you're at, unless you're in the city. Yeah. Yep. Oh, I forgot to get my chi. I'll be right back. Ooh, I'm back again. So, I'm gonna be weird. It's not tea, it's just hot water. That's how, like, weird I am right now about food. At least today. I'm not like this all the time. Like, sometimes I like things that are nice and tasty and blah blah blah, but I just kind of feel like having just something hot because my throat sometimes gets all croaky when I'm talking a lot. I don't actually talk a whole lot in the day. Ooh, it's hot. Oh, it is hot water. Oh, and I need to show you my lion. He's just lying around. He's I don't know why I like to keep his tag on, but I bought him from Hobby Lobby, and I think he's super cute. He looks like a puppy to me. Like I feel like I'm holding a puppy. He's so cute, and he's got the best hair. So, yep. Yeah. Oh, and the water in the background is it's just nature sounds that I have playing. Because I like to have something in the background. It's nice. So, I'm thinking it's almost 4 o'clock. I'm gonna be streaming for another hour, but, wow, excuse me. I'm thinking of just taking a quick break and, maybe 5-10 minutes and I'll be back. But what I want to talk about when I get back is, how sensory overload can be traumatic and how, the nature of the autism symptoms themselves interacting with the world can be very traumatic in and of itself. And yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna talk about that, and I'm gonna talk about my difficulty in actually getting the PTSD diagnosis. I know I kept saying I was gonna talk about that, but I like to over explain. So I'm gonna take a quick, like, 5 minute break, 10 minute break, depends on, I guess. I guess I should actually make up my mind. I mean, a lot of us are Aspies here. I might as well be very specific. I think I'm gonna take a 10 minute break. Yeah, that sounds good. So if you guys all want to, like, take a break, get a snack, uh, use the loo. I will be back in 10 minutes.
The time is now 4 p.m.
Welcome back to our ASMR session. I can't do that seriously. Oh, my singing is relaxing? You mean like this? Gotta think of a song. Can you feel the love tonight? Okay, that's not my real singing voice. I'm just being stupid here. Yeah, I mean, I don't do ASMR specifically. Here, wait, I'm gonna go back to the. Oh wait, no, we're not playing Zelda today. I can't seem to find my. Oh, there's my streams. I don't do ASMR, but I have like experimented with things with the microphone. And I have a friend who's into ASMR, and I tried using this like little. It's a duster. This is what it sounds like. Okay, I'll put it away. But yeah, I do find if I listen to ASMR, I find it creepy. But I appreciate that some people are into it. So, but like I've tried listening to it, I just can't take it seriously. There was this one that I found that was really bizarre. This isn't like typical ASMR, I think, but like there was this lady eating a pickle in front of the microphone. It's just like crunching. Just it's like, how is that relaxing or attractive in any way? It's just kind of weird. Weird to me. Some people like the sound of chewing. So, yeah. Alright. Alright. Yeah, sorry if that was bugging some of you. I have these cool little, they're like clip-ons. They're amber and they're very lightly tinted, but I'm going to put these on because, again, I don't like light and I have all these lights on so you could see me. So, yeah, I hate eating and drinking sounds too. I don't get it. That's why, normally I don't eat when I'm on my, live stream, and if I do, I just make sure it's like just, you know, water or something like kind of liquidy, so I'm not like chewing annoyingly right by the microphone, because that's not very lovely to listen to when you're trying to focus on what somebody's saying. So, one moment while I get these put on. Oh, come on, you little things. You can do it. Yay! Haha, and they're kind of cool because I can flip them up and I can, if I want to be overstimulated at any time, I just flip them up. So, I heard my dog bark. Woof! Woof woof! That's what I think of your barking, Sammy. Ugh. So, yes, I would like a link to your video, Favs. So apparently Favs is a video relating to trauma and resilience. I think I've checked out a couple of videos on your channel. I don't know if I've seen that one yet. But, I would be interested in seeing that later. So, let me think. Where were we? So, like I said before we took the break, one thing that I wanted to touch on is how sensory overload can be traumatic to someone on the spectrum. And specifically, like, the autism symptoms. Well, how do I put this? I don't think that autism by itself is traumatic. I don't think that the way that we are is traumatic by itself. It's just when you combine that with a world that is just not compatible with our neurology, that is to us extreme and loud and unfriendly, that is what is traumatic. It's not that, you know, it's not my neurodivergence that is, if that makes sense. But the neurodivergence is what contributes to the traumatic experiences, at least for me. And, like, sensory overload, it just by itself is a terrifying experience for a lot of us. And sometimes, now it's not always super terrifying. I think it depends on what it is. I think for some of us it can range, I think it can range from just kind of annoying to completely overwhelming and destabilizing. One example that I have, for me, actually, the same stimuli, at least for me, lights is this specific stimuli. it can start off as annoying, but it can go all the way to being completely like disabling. Um, because for me it's kind of gradual. Like if I'm under fluorescent lights, let's say I walk into Walmart. I don't walk into Walmart and all of a sudden I'm like, in full meltdown mode or something and like, ah, the lights are so bright. Sorry if I was loud there. But like I don't immediately go into level 100 of sensory overload, if that makes sense. I start off walking to Walmart and lights are just, and I say Walmart because Walmart has the most disgusting fluorescent lights. Like visually to me, like the lights are so bright, so white, so like bzzz. And so when I first walk in there, I'm mostly just annoyed by them. It's like, ugh, like my eyes don't like it, my head doesn't like it, it's annoying, I wish it would go away. But I can actually get really anxious just walking into there because not necessarily because that level 1 starting out is really bad. It's because I know if I stay there for too long, it's going to go all the way up to level 100. And I'm going to have a legit breakdown. What the heck is happening to the color? Do you see that? The color of my cam. It's like doing some weird stuff. It just like flashed different tints. Maybe I'm seeing things. Maybe these are... No, it is changing tint. I do apologize for that. I don't know what that is and what's going on. I will see if I can fix it right away just because I know this is going to be kind of annoying. Color range. Let me try something. I'm going to do partial color range and then I'll switch back. Okay. Full color range. I don't know if that makes a difference. I hope it doesn't do that again. So yeah, I'll be anxious because I'm anticipating it getting worse. And depending on how much I went through that day, like walking into Walmart without my sunglasses on, because I usually wear sunglasses when I go into a store, walking in there without sunglasses can trigger, like, it can make me honestly feel like crying if I've already had a bad day. And so I have to, like, I almost never go into stores unless I absolutely have to. I would prefer to order stuff online. Can't use food stamps to buy stuff online, unfortunately. That kind of stinks, especially when I need food and I don't want to walk into Walmart to get it. So level 100 for me, for when I'm under fluorescent lights, is like, well, I guess I can't explain it as just level 1 and level 100. I'd have to explain this gradually what happens. Like, I start out, like, it'll be annoying to my eyes and my head, and it'll feel bright and just, it kind of hurts my eyes. And what's kind of weird is I actually start to get really hyper. Like, I'll feel like I'm so full of energy, but now I know that that's just leading up to me having sensory overload, and it's not really good, and I prefer not to get into that state. So I just have a lot of energy and be like, wee, for a while, and then all of a sudden, it's as if all of the little functions in my brain start just gradually shutting off. It's like, I can't think straight. I don't know what I'm doing. Like my body feels weird. Everything feels really weird. Lights are brighter. My heart's pounding, and I feel like I'm just shutting down. And it's like such a helpless feeling when this happens, because it's like bad things could happen to me when I'm in that state. It's like I'm vulnerable. It's like my shields are down. I can't do anything. I can't think straight. I can't reason. I can't function anymore. I can't speak correctly. And so I also, because I've had that experience so many times, I also have an emotional association with it, with that feeling of helplessness. I start to feel like my heart is sinking. I feel like I'm getting like it's this feeling of utter dread and fear and like helplessness and anxiety, and just this idea that I can't do anything about it and I'm stuck like this. and it's like I can't react to it, and like I shut down, and it's like it's really hard for me to like get out of there because I shut down, and I almost have to be coaxed out of the store because of how bad it can be. And so I mean, normally I can still like, and honestly I commend all autistic people who are able to do this. Like, there are things that like we get to the point where we can't do anything, and yet we force ourselves to anyway. Like when you're like shutting down and you manage to get up and walk out of the store, that's like amazing. Like, that's hard to do when you are, at least when you're like me, when instead of a fight or flight response you have a freeze response. It's hard to move. So that's utterly terrifying, and to me that is almost like the textbook example of, well, not textbook, out of the textbook, because this isn't really described in the DSM, but it's like a good example of what being traumatized feels like, what a life-threatening situation feels like, when you feel like you are in danger, and something bad is happening to you, and you can't do anything about it, and you're powerless. And so to me, like, sensory overload by itself, I would categorize that as traumatic, and I would say it is, that by itself is enough for, you know, to say that, you know, you have PTSD. I mean, you'd have to have like all the criteria, I think, to actually get the diagnosis for that. But like, if you like, I have a lot of the symptoms of, you know what, let me actually look up criteria for PTSD. I swear to you, I've researched this. I know all of the criteria. My memory just drops information when I'm not using it, and I need to look it up again. So, okay. So there's different groups. There's 4, no. Ooh. Okay. Wait, is this the DSM-5? Or the DSM? Yeah, DSM-5. Let me see if I can find, like, an official... something a little more official. PTSD. .gov. Yeah, okay. If it's .gov, it's probably... I'm just trying to make sure that I'm actually getting the criteria. It's not, giving me anything useful. I'm gonna use Google. So you use a different search engine sometimes. So, okay, I found the criteria here. Alright, so there's different categories here. Criterion A, one of these is required. Okay, the person was exposed to death, threatened death, actual or threatened serious injury, or actual or threatened sexual violence in the following ways. And in terms of sensory overload, I'd characterize that as threatened serious injury, because it's like injury to your brain. It's injury to your whole nervous system. It's like your senses attacking you. So in the following ways, you gotta have one of these. Direct exposure, which, if you experience the sensory overload, that's probably it. Witnessing the trauma, learning that a relative or close friend was exposed to the trauma, or indirect exposure to aversive details of the trauma, usually in the course of professional duties, for example, first responders, medics, blah, 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 blah. So like a lot of us, it might be actual direct exposure for the sensory overload. Criterion B, intrusion symptoms. One of these is required. The traumatic event is persistently re-experienced in the following ways: unwanted or upsetting memories, nightmares, flashbacks, emotional distress after exposure to traumatic reminders, physical reactivity after exposure to traumatic reminders. I have quite a few of these. I remember, not only do I have the upsetting memories, like just thinking about being overloaded is very stressful. I'm at the point, though, where I shut off my emotions when I think about it, because I experience this so much. It's like, what else can I do? Nightmares. I always get this feeling of passing out when I'm like, when I'm having sensory overload, especially recently. And because of that feeling of helplessness, it's like this overwhelming urge to just pass out. And I never do, because I've only passed out once in my life, and that was because I didn't eat or something. But it's just like this overwhelming feeling, and I'll have nightmares about actually passing out in those situations. Usually it's almost always out in public, which is where all of the bright lights are and all of the those things are. And that's always a little bit upsetting. Flashbacks, emotional distress, yeah. Physical reactivity, yeah. I get tense when I, know I'm gonna go to the store. I'm gonna, like, actually, honestly, I kind of just don't think about it until I'm there at the store, but I'll still, like, going into the store, I'll be, like, really tense, and I have to calm myself. Criteria on C, avoidance when required. Avoidance of trauma-related stimuli after the trauma in the following ways. Trauma-related thoughts or feelings, or trauma-related external reminders. So you're avoiding these things, whether it's external reminders or thoughts or feelings, or in my case, the actual source of the trauma, which is lights. It's like they're everywhere. They're everywhere. How do I avoid them? I turn all my lights off. I'm okay right now. I guess I got these glasses on, but it's like my brain is heating up even a little bit right now, but I'm like, right now it's more of a level of annoyance because I specifically set up my room in a way that the lights, they're not bright and white. They're all like, sort of a yellow color, and they're dim and they're much better. So I would never, ever, 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 ever in my life have fluorescent lights in my room, like the big overhead ones, ever. But I avoid going to the store. I remember I was trying to see, because there are certain things that I get from Walmart specifically, and like it's cheaper everywhere, and I'm trying to save. There's cheaper there than it was other places, and I'm like trying to save money, so I'm like, okay, I'll do my grocery shopping at Walmart. I remember doing research to figure out if, because I learned, oh, they actually have an online shopping thing. You can like do a pickup and pick up like anything you need from Walmart, and you just select it all, and you need like, $30 minimum or something. But I figured out I can't use, because I'm living off of food stamps pretty much to pay for food, and I realized I can't use food stamps online, like anywhere. And I thought, can I do that with Walmart? And I figured out, nope, can't do that with Walmart. And so I remember breaking down, because I was so set on being able to order it online. I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be such a huge relief to be able to just go there, wait outside, and they bring it all out to me. Like, that would be amazing. But then I realized I still have to go into the store. And I hate it. And so I try to keep my grocery shopping very, very few trips, quick trips. I try to go when there's not a lot of people. But even when I really need food a lot, I'm just dealing with not having food. And I mean, I have my freezer stocked. I'm a freezer hoarder, food hoarder. I have tons of stuff in my freezer, so I don't go hungry, so I don't have to go to the store. So yeah, there's some avoidance for you. There's actually more here. I just went on about that one for a while. Criterion D. Negative alterations in cognitions and mood. 2 of these are required. So that means negative thoughts or feelings that began or worsened after the trauma in the following ways. Okay, inability to recall key features of the trauma, overly negative thoughts and assumptions about oneself or the world, exaggerated blame of self or others for causing the trauma, negative effect, which I think means negative effect is what is negative effect? I think it's overall negativity, but I'm not sure. Decreased interest in activities. So that might look a little like depression. Feeling isolated and difficulty experiencing positive effect. I have probably most of these. I honestly, like I said, I don't even think, when I'm on my way to the store, I don't even think about the fact that I'm going to be overwhelmed, or that I'm not thinking about the lights. And and sometimes I literally cannot remember how it feels like. I can now because I'm forcing myself to remember, but when I'm like really overwhelmed, like I'll even sometimes forget. I have like some gaps in memory when I'm like experiencing sensory overload, but part of that's probably just neurological. Overly negative thoughts and assumptions about oneself or the world. Yeah, like the whole world seems very threatening when I can barely go outside my house without getting overstimulated. And I sometimes feel like everyone's out to get me or nobody understands me. And let's see. Decreased interest in activities. Sometimes I just have no energy for anything. I don't like, sometimes I will have energy for stuff and like I won't want to do anything that I like, even like I won't want to play video games, I won't want to do anything. I have to make sure I have an extremely low stress lifestyle to even just enjoy a video game or much of anything. Feeling isolated, well, I kind of have to isolate myself because the overwhelmingness of everything. Difficulty experiencing positive effect. That's getting better, honestly, but like I've tracked my moods once for like a year, I think. No, I think it was just a couple months, but oh.
The time is now 4:30 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Robot. It's 4:30 CT, 5:30 ET. So I got a half hour left. Yeah, I have. Sometimes I remember when I was a teenager, I was negative like almost all the time, but now I'm consciously trying to be a lot more I guess optimistic. It's kind of hard. Okay, criterion E, alterations in arousal or activity. Trauma-related arousal and reactivity that began or worsened after the trauma in the following ways. Irritability or aggression, risky or destructive behavior, hypervigilance, heightened startle reaction, difficulty concentration, difficulty sleeping. I don't want to like get into all this like too much because I like know there's some more I wanted to talk about. But yeah, I have a bunch of those. I get really irritable and I don't usually have risky behavior, but I know when I'm legit triggered, I shouldn't drive a car because I will like floor it and like freak out, and I need to like not get in the car when I'm triggered. Hypervigilance, which hypervigilance is a word that means you are like basically surveying the area, or I don't know if that's the right word, looking around for threats, making sure that, you know, the environment does not have any triggers, doesn't have anything that's going to hurt you. Heightened startle reaction, that's actually very common in people on the spectrum, or sometimes it's actually suppressed startle reaction. I mostly have a suppressed one, but I know a lot of people have a heightened one, and I have to be careful not to like sneak up behind them or make any loud noises. Difficulty concentrating, all the time. Difficulty sleeping, all the time. Criterion F, duration required. Symptoms last for more than 1 month. Well, I'm more than a month old. I'm exactly 27 years old, and so that means that it's been happening for 27 years. So, yeah, I meet that. Criterion G, functional significance required. Symptoms can create distress or functional impairment in social or occupational. Yeah, I can't work full time, can't socialize correctly. Part of that's just being autistic, but like the when I'm triggered, I literally have to like not work. I have to not do anything. So the PTSD itself is very distressing. Okay, criterion H, exclusion. Symptoms are not due to medication, substance use, or other illness. That gets tricky, the or other illness one, because the thing is, I think they mean like a physical illness, not really not like autism. Because also, like I said, I don't think it's the autism itself that causes it. I think it's the interaction with the world that causes it. It's like the things that are outside of us that are causing it. So I know I went really long. I wanted to get through all of the criteria, so it kind of makes a little more sense. Because I think breaking it down like that makes it easier to... Okay, let's see what you all were talking about while I was yapping away. Hypersensitivity and dissociation, yeah. I think sensory overload can feel like that. At least for me, I know I dissociate, like things don't feel real. Sometimes I forget what I'm doing, I forget what's going on, I forget where I am. And like, nothing feels real. So, huh. Bob Elvis says, my peers in my youth wanted to go to discos. I went with them, but it was hell for me, so I stopped going with them. Yeah, I avoid things like that. I avoid concerts and dances and things now because, like, I've been to one or two and I have enjoyed them, but it's like every time it's complete like sensory overload. So I didn't want to deal with that anymore. I really like that in groups of people, such as walking to a room full of people. Honestly, I like people, and if they're people that I know, I think I've gotten better socially. I'm not as afraid socially, but if I am already triggered or I'm like in a oh sorry, I'm not thinking straight. If I'm in a bad state, I can't, like, I am afraid to socialize. So I don't have any SB videos on marriage life. I actually broke up with Matt, so I don't really have the experience of being married yet. Oh yeah, math is not fun. I was terrible at math and I hated it. Yeah, there's opportunity for a food stamp online store. There better be one at some point. They're so hard to find. I have not heard of that song. Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of overlap between disorders, but that's why there's so much specific criteria, like when it comes to things like PTSD or really anything. Like depression is really broad, so I think a lot of people could fit, you know, the criteria of like depression or anxiety generally. But when it's something really specific, like for example, it's one thing to have anxiety, it's another thing to have like OCD, which is an anxiety disorder. So their criteria is very specific, and that's why you need to see that's why they usually require you to see my brain is dying, a licensed therapist who is licensed to diagnose, because they know how to go through the criteria and ask you very specific questions and see like, do you meet this criteria? And awesome. Okay, just let me finish reading what all you say. Okay, I'm glad to hear that this is cheering you up, Babs. I hope you feel better. It really sucks being sick. Yeah, honestly, thanks you guys. Things weren't really great with Matt, like, in general, like, I think I was kind of fooling myself into thinking that it was gonna work out, but, like, I guess I explained it, I wrote a blog post about it, I explained it better there, but I feel, a little more free now, like, I feel better not being with him, so that's good. So, I want to talk now a little bit about the difficulty in getting a PTSD diagnosis. Because it's obvious to me that I meet the criteria for PTSD, and like, I went over it 1,000 times and I've doubted myself a lot, and I thought maybe I don't, maybe I do, but that's like, when I go through it and I think really honestly, like, okay, was this experience traumatic for me? Am I reliving this experience? And am I having the, you know, panic attacks? I'm like, yeah, I have all of this stuff. And so I went to a therapist. Like, for a while, I had this therapist. There was this specific therapist that I really liked, who I was seeing her since I was at Judson, even. And, well, which is my university, if you don't know, Judson University. And I really liked her, but I had the opportunity to see another therapist and have it be covered by insurance. So this other therapist is who I saw to get the diagnosis. So she didn't know me quite as well as my other counselor. And speaking of Judson, there were a lot of things leading up to me deciding to go get a diagnosis. Not only was I having persistent mental problems for a long time and extreme reactions to things, and like I would act so freaking weird when I would get close to people, and like I would have panic attacks. I didn't know how to name all of this stuff back then. I just thought I was just crazy. And then I thought, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I have actually been traumatized. Something must have happened to me for me to be acting like this. Like, what is it? And so I went to... Sorry, it's like I have this specific image in my head. Like, I need to share it. Like, because I remember very vividly, like, times when I was at Judson, because I was, like, on my own at that time, and I liked being on my own, but, like, I remember I would be triggered by something. I don't remember what it was that I was triggered by, but I remember, like, hiding underneath things. I remember hiding under a table when, like, I was hanging out with this guy that I was getting close to, and I really liked him, and he liked me, and I just broke down all of a sudden. I hid under the table. Like, something happened. Something snapped in me. Like, I think it was that whole closeness thing. And, I hid under the table. There was another situation where, I found myself hiding under, like, there was, like, this printer with an overhang, like, and nobody was there. It was, like, at night. It was, like, a classroom hall that also was a dorm hall, and I, like, went downstairs to one of the classrooms, and I just hid under a printer. I couldn't move. I wanted to die. Long story short, like, I had to call somebody, and, like, they, like, called the campus police, so that was, like, very, like, stressful, because I thought I was gonna, like, hurt myself, but I just couldn't get myself to move from under that thing. I was so terrified, and I didn't know why. So, like, situations like this gave me the idea to go see a therapist and see maybe I have some kind of a trauma thing that I haven't resolved. Like, maybe I thought, oh, maybe it's something I don't remember. I don't know. I never would have thought that, maybe it's because I'm autistic. So I went to see this therapist, and I said, I think I might have PTSD, and I wanted to see if we can pursue this and look at the criteria and see if I have PTSD. So we went through the criteria. I was kind of struggling to come up with something specific that fits what most people would consider traumatic. I did come up with some things. It's like, well, I moved from one city to another when I was a teenager, and I talked about all my social rejections. I talked about, issues with people and my reactions to that. And almost every time she said, oh, those are just normal things. Those are normal things that people experience, and, like, it's not really considered traumatic, so you can't really have this diagnosis. And so I walked out of there just totally crushed, because I thought, like, because it's like, I mean, at least I thought, maybe she was right and I didn't have PTSD, and it's like, okay, I guess I have an answer, but the answer is I'm nuts, and I don't want to feel like I'm nuts. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. There has to be something wrong. And eventually, later on, I got the OCD diagnosis, and so I thought a lot of my reactions might be OCD too. But I'm like, no, there's something more. There's something more to this. It's not just OCD. I know I have OCD, but there's all these other symptoms. I just, like, they're so tied in with very specific things, and, like, things that I consider traumatic. It has to be PTSD. So I pursued that again by going, and this is like maybe a year or two later. So this was very recent. This was like a week ago, honestly. I went to see my therapist from Judson University that I really liked, because she had known me for a long time. She knows how my brain works. She knows, like, how I talk, how I function, how I process things, and so I figure it would be better to try to see if what she thinks. At first, she wasn't licensed to give diagnoses, but she recently, like, got that license. So I'm like, I might as well take advantage of that and see. So she sat down with me and she said, because I'm on the autism spectrum, and she agrees with me, and, like, once we started talking about autism and trauma, immediately she just said something that, like, totally confirmed what I had believed about autism and trauma for so long. and like I was like ready to cry. I was so excited. I was like happy cry. But she said that she does believe there is a high incidence of trauma and possibly PTSD among the autistic population. It's just that therapists are not equipped to properly diagnose them because they don't really understand. They might not completely understand how autism can affect, I guess, how susceptible to trauma you are. Oh, sorry, my throat's getting croaky again. You know what else is croaky? This little wooden frog my friend gave me. Wait, wrong side. It does that because there's these little ridges. And you just... It's so fun. Okay, sorry. So anyway, so the next time that we met up, she had this little book that had all the criteria of PTSD in it. So it was like a mini DSM thing. And it had all the specific things that I just read from that website, which is what's in the DSM pretty much. And she said, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the criteria, and we're going to adapt it to you. Adapt it to your experience of being autistic. And by that, it's not really like, it's not like bending it just so I fit. Like, I don't know how to put it. It's not like me going in there and say, hey, I want to be diagnosed with, I don't know, narcissistic personality disorder. Can we like change the criteria so I fit? No. What we were doing was basically just taking autism into consideration in this whole thing. And so we went through all of it, and I was explaining, you know, these specific things and saying, you know, this was traumatic for me. Like, this was intense. I have panic attacks when I think about this. I avoid this. So we went through all of those, and I was very specific, and like more specific than I was when I went through the criteria a little bit ago with you guys. And so at the end of it, she said, yeah, you meet all the criteria of PTSD. And I'm like, wow, weird. That's great. And so I even asked her, like, can I get it in writing? And I said, no, I got a little official letter that says, like, you know, I officially meet the criteria of PTSD. Like, it's my official, like diagnosis now. And like, I feel like I needed that piece of paper, because it's like, I went so long thinking I'm crazy, and then after seeing that other therapist and saying you don't have PTSD, I continued thinking, okay, I must be really crazy. Really, really crazy. And so like having that is like so, it's like confirming my experience. It's saying, yes, like living as Alyssa on the spectrum, interacting with this world, the things that I've specifically experienced have been traumatic, and it makes me kind of realize that a lot of other people on the spectrum probably have had a similar experience, and yet they're constantly being told things like, oh, that's not a big deal. Why are you overreacting about that? There's a word for that. I think it's called gaslighting. Let me look it up. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation that seeks to sow seeds of doubt in a targeted individual or members of targeted group, making them question their own memory, perception, and sanity, using persistent denial, misdirection, contradiction, and lying in attempts to destabilize the target and delegitimize the target's belief. So if your belief is that that something is intensely distressing to you and the person tells you it shouldn't be, or that it's not, or you're crazy, like, that's pretty much gaslighting. And I know it says, like, I know calling it psychological manipulation seems a little bit harsh, because honestly most people who say that, mostly they're, you know, non-autistic people, or people who don't know a lot about autism, or who aren't particularly sensitive people. I don't think they consciously try to like manipulate you into thinking that you're crazy. I think it's more like I feel like they mean well. It's just that they think that by telling you, oh, you should let go of this, or oh, that's not a big deal, that maybe you'll actually internalize that and think, you know, oh, you're right, that's totally not a big deal. Oh, you made all my fears go away. Thank you. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. That's really not how it works. So, I think autistic people's our experiences and our perceptions are constantly being denied, I guess. No, what's the word? Like people are basically they're making us question it, or like they're kind of belittling our experience, and they might not necessarily mean to, but it's just because they might think, oh, because they have this disorder, they can't see the real view of how it should be. It's like, oh, this encounter with this dog, for instance, like, oh, this dog jumped on you. It's like, the correct perception should be, oh, this dog's excited to see me, and yeah, I was a little surprised when the dog jumped on me, but I'm fine. So they probably assume, okay, that's the correct view. Now here's your view, that it was absolutely terrifying. You're going to have panic attacks every time you see a dog. They're going to look at that and they're going to think it's silly, it's weird, it's not real or something, or I don't know, or that it's or that you should just get over it. And that's not true, and that's where I think a lot of people like go wrong in trying to understand autistic people. And I think that's very unfortunately for the autistic people. Like, I feel like that leads us to really question our sanity and to think that like our perceptions must not be correct. We must be overdramatic, and then we end up feeling like crap about ourselves because we're overreacting to everything, and like, oh, Alyssa, you should just be able to handle this, right? Like, what's wrong with you? And like, that's totally not true. And like, the best thing that has helped me ever, honestly, has been people who really understand, like my counselor and very specific close friends of mine, when I tell them about these things and they say, yes, Alyssa, the way you feel about this is completely legitimate. Doesn't matter if somebody else doesn't experience that the same way or feel that the same way. The way that you experience this is totally legitimate, and you have the right to feel that way, and like, you have the right to react to that way, and you can, and you can express your feelings. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can, like, it's like the first time that I feel like I'm not a piece of crap. So sorry. All right, I'm gonna check all of your oh, very funny, Buff Elvis. You almost gave me a heart attack. It's not gaslighting, Alyssa. Don't do that. Don't make me question my reality. Okay, it is kind of funny though, honestly. You have a Star Child. You have a sudden craving for ramen. I am so sorry. I've been eating ramen recently. My cravings must have passed on to you. I'm so sorry. I love ramen so much, like, but it's so bad for me. I've been having it so much lately. I feel so fat and like I can't think straight anymore. Yeah. Oh, that's very insightful, Fabs. Fabs says, if you experience a large number of adverse childhood experiences, you may suffer symptoms that are that are attributed to autism, and it's about unpicking. Oh, wait a second. I'm trying to understand what you're saying now. I get what you're saying. You're saying that someone who experiences trauma in childhood, they might exhibit things that look like autism? Like maybe if they have a flashback or something, or they react to something. I mean, that does make sense. That might happen for some people, but I also think that autism and trauma, because they look so similar, it is possible that you could have both, or one, or the other. Huh. I see. Yeah, you say it's odd doctors keep putting your mental health issues down to ASD, and it isn't all ASD. It can't be, and it's also annoying. Yeah, that's gotta be frustrating. And I think it's like, no matter what you're diagnosed with, whether it's autism or like OCD or some other thing, like, your experiences should be validated by somebody no matter what. Yeah, you got a panic attack once while you were at a party. I'm sorry, that's really hard. I've had that before. It's awful. Yeah, okay. Oh, that's a good question. Coney Wilkinson. What if you don't react but seem trapped in your mind, unable to articulate yourself? Yes. Honestly, I sometimes feel like I'm reacting, but I'm not outwardly. There's probably no way you could tell if I'm having like a shutdown. I sometimes say meltdown, but it probably only looks like a melt. Like my meltdowns tend to just be me, just tears coming down my face. That's it. It's mostly internal, and I do feel trapped, and it is terrifying. It doesn't matter if I'm not reacting outwardly. It's still utterly terrifying. So yeah, shut down. That's what I would call them. Oh, I don't quite understand what you said here above Elvis. What you said sounds to me like running away from autism, compatible life route. Yay, you guys like my frog. Sweet. Okay, Starchild, you said you think you have high functioning depression, but whenever you talk about it with your family, they say it's just your autism, but you don't think that it is. You can be autistic and still have depression. Like, now you can have something called autistic burnout, where like you just kind of stop functioning, but it's very similar to depression. I honestly kind of categorize them similarly. I mean, I use depression as a word to describe autistic burnout sometimes. But it could be, you have depression too, so. Yeah. You can relate to me thinking I'm crazy. Yeah, it's not really a good thing to relate to, but it's not fun. Oh. Love Elvis, a dog jumping on you is a life and death situation for you? You have 37 packets, mail them to me. The ramen packets. Yeah. Give Alyssa a ramen bath. Alright, I guess I'll go take a ramen bath after this. Yeah. Alright. Yeah, it's really frustrating when they say, oh, it's just your autism or whatever. It feels a little invalidating, because, I mean, even if it's not like, depression or PTSD or something else, like, even if it doesn't have a label to it, if you experience something as anxiously, or if you experience something very unpleasant, I think people should just acknowledge this is very unpleasant for you. Like, this is like, and what you're experiencing is like, it's not just because you're autistic or whatever, it's because of, I don't know, just because you're experiencing it. Yeah, so anyway, I got 3 minutes left for the stream, so that was pretty much all I wanted to talk about, and I think I touched on just about everything, and I hope that you guys I guess benefited from somehow from this information, because I've gone a long time basically kind of dismissing this even in myself. And, yeah. So, who's after me? Because this is for the Autistic Gaming Initiative again. So, the person streaming after me is Belades. So if you want to check out, let me see if I can find their, they have a, oh, I think they're going to be on Twitch. yeah, person after me is Belades, so check them out. And if you want to support the Autistic Gaming Initiative, there should be some links in the description to the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network and the Autism Women's Network. I was a hard time pronouncing that first one, but yeah, check them out because they're great, and you know, donate if you can. So yeah, it was good to see you guys. I know it's been a while since I've been back, so yeah, here's a little heart for all of you, and have a good evening. Bye bye.